Well, winter has finally arrived here in Illinois, but the real reason I've gathered you here is to bring you up to date on what we've done with the Three Rivers Pantry Challenge. So let's take a look. So for our first pantry challenge meal, we went with a big pot of chili. We have not had chili in about 1.5 to 2 years. I don't know why, because we really love chili, but for some reason I have not made it. I don't think I made it at all last winter. So it was a big hit to have that this week. And I made enough that it actually lasted us 3 meals, and we were fine with leftovers, so we were thrilled to have it. I also made a homemade cornbread, and I feel like the recipe I use is to die for. And so we just kind of ladled the chili over the cornbread, topped it with some cheddar cheese. It was delicious. This is not a meal per se, but it is a way. I did some preserving this week. I had way too much milk that I bought at Christmas to make soup for a crowd, and I just didn't want it to go to waste because organic whole milk is not cheap, and I don't have a problem dividing it up, freezing it, and thawing it out for recipes. I'm not a big milk drinker, so I don't feel like it alters the flavor in my recipes, so I'm fine doing that. So that's what I did with the milk, so I'm just showing that here. And then I also had another recipe, but not one to eat, but one that I've been working on for about a month. I've had some comfrey kind of macerating in some organic olive oil, getting ready to make some comfrey salve for future use, and I was able to complete that process and was able to use some of the beeswax from my own hives, so that was kind of fun, and I'm really glad to have this in my little herbal cabinet for future use. Then we made the ham pot pie. Now, I have never made a ham pot pie, but this is definitely something I will be making again. I make a big turkey and a big ham at Thanksgiving, and I always have lots of leftover ham and turkey, and even though I give meat away, I end up with a lot still. So I've been kind of whittling away trying to get some of this ham used. So this was one way. I still have more to pull out and use, but was one way that I could use some of that. I also was able to use celery that I grew that I had in the freezer, and then some of my cold storage vegetables to saute up to put in it. I also had ham stock in the freezer, so I used that for some of the liquid and chopped up some of the ham, and it was really delicious. I will definitely, like I said, make this again. I used a crust that is actually like a hot butter crust, so instead of putting cold butter in it like you would in a regular pie crust, it was a hot butter crust. I feel like maybe the name of the person who had this recipe for this crust was Food Wishes or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but he has a YouTube channel, and so I used his recipe. It was delicious. So easy to work with. I rolled it out, filled it up, and when I got the pies put together, just did an egg wash, and it was so flaky and so delicious that it will be in my recipe file for sure, because it was so good. I also had made like a week and a half ago some herb garlic rolls and breadsticks and baguettes, and so I pulled some of those rolls out of the freezer just to have with this, just for a little something extra. We have already used the breadsticks, and I still have the baguettes in the freezer, so you'll probably see those come up in future meals in the next couple months, but this was a really good recipe. I didn't have any sourdough ready to go, so this was just a yeast recipe that I could make all in one day, and it was not difficult, and it's delicious. So I would definitely make that again as well when I need to in a pinch. I also do my own tomato soup that I can from my own tomatoes and herbs that I have in my garden. And so we had some tomato soup. I usually simmer it down so it's pretty condensed, and then I reconstitute it with some homemade chicken broth. And this time I did use chicken broth, but I had milk I was trying to get rid of. And so I put some milk in, and you can kind of see in the picture I wasn't watching it close enough and the milk kind of curdled a little bit, but it was still very tasty. And then the croutons on top were croutons I had made at Christmas time for a salad, and we had extras, so I threw them in the freezer and I just pulled them out, sauteed them up in a skillet to give them some new life, and put them on top. The soup was delicious. You can't have tomato soup without grilled cheese, so I did a grilled cheese. I had this bread in the freezer. My friend made it. It's a sourdough rye, and it was wonderful. I put some pepper jack cheese and some grated sharp cheddar, and it was a really nice twist on a grilled cheese to have with our soup. And there it is, kind of all laid out on the table. As you can see, we are still in Christmas mode here. I did not take my decorations down till well after Christmas because I don't have time to enjoy them before Christmas. So after all the hoopla is over with, that's when I can really appreciate my Christmas decorations. So they'll be up for a while. I'm kind of the anomaly in the neighborhood, but that's fine. I enjoy them, so I'm gonna leave them up for a while. On Christmas, I did make a Christmas casserole and for breakfast. And so we had leftovers I put in the freezer, so I pulled some of that out. I do intermittent fasting a lot during the week, so on weekends it's kind of my time to enjoy breakfast. And so I pulled this out for a couple of breakfasts over the weekend, and then I had some sourdough bread, you can see there in the background, that I sliced a piece for each of us, and we had some toast along with it, which was really good. It's probably not my best sourdough, but it really was fine. It was tasty as toast. So I also did an Alfredo, and when I make pasta, I never just make half a package of pasta. There's only 2 of us here most days, but if I'm gonna make pasta, I make the whole package. And then what I'm not going to use for the recipe I'm making, I just put in a Ziploc bag or a container of some kind, put it in the freezer for future use. So that's what I pulled out of the freezer to use. And there's a combination of linguine and spaghetti noodles there. But I also had a little bit of cooked sausage that I had in there also. I never make half a package of meat. I always cook it all, even if I'm not going to use it. And I pulled that out of the freezer to put in my Alfredo sauce. It was very good. Also, the rest of that sourdough got sliced thin, and I brushed it with some olive oil, salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and toasted it in the oven to have with our Alfredo. It was very good. And that pretty much ends the recipes that I did for this week. We do eat leftovers, so when there's extra, I'm not cooking other meals, so this was all we could consume this week. But trying to get through the freezer leftover things as much as I can, then I'll kind of start working on the other freezer and the fresh stuff that I have in cold storage, kind of focusing on those, and then the canned things, of course. But that's gonna end for the rest of the week for what we did for our recipes. And I want to thank you for coming along, keeping me honest, and we'll see you next time with some new things. Bye.